Hi there, it's Lee here. In today's video I'm going to be continuing part 2 of our Ethereum mining rig build on a budget. So some of our hardware that I was actually waiting for has actually arrived. So I have two R7 370 graphics cards. These are the 4 gig versions and they're preferred over the 2 gig versions because of the Ethereum DAG file size. So I've got two of those. They was £140 each. So they're going to actually power our Ethereum mining rig. I'm hoping to get into the region of about 30 mega hashes per second with the two running combined. There is a possibility it might be able to get a little bit more than that, maybe 32 to 34 mega hashes, but that will be determined once I do some tweaking and testing. The actual graphics cards are really low power and they're going to be using about 115 watts each on the graphics cards. So that's the actual graphics cards that are taken care of. The next part is the actual power supply. In the end I decided to go and spend a little bit of extra money to get a better quality power supply, but also one that I was going to be able to use a lot more in the future. Originally I was just going to go super budget and just buy like a £40 600 or 500 or 600 watt EVGA power supply, which would have powered this entire rig perfectly fine. But what I thought is, in this particular case, as I'm spending the money anyway, I thought I'd actually get a slightly better power supply which had better support for PCI Express connectors. This one actually has 4 8-pin PCI Express connectors, whereas the other previous models only supported 2 8-pin PCI Express connectors. So what that means is that in the future, should I decide, I can run either like a mining rig with 4 cards of this sort of capacity, or I could run sort of 250 or 200 watt sort of cards, more powerful, more demanding graphics cards. So this power supply was a much better all-rounder. It was also a gold rated power supply, this one, whereas the previous one was only it's actually an unrated one, or sometimes they call them white rated, which is basically just a bare minimum 80 rating power supply, so only just 80% efficiency. This one I was expecting to be using at home most likely, so I wanted also a lot of efficiency combined within that as well as. So I decided to go with this one. So it's a 750 GQ and it's a 750 watt power supply. It's also got a 135 millimeter cooling fan, which you can. There's also an eco mode as well, which you can actually enable, and it stops the actual fan from turning at all unless the demand is really there. So I'll probably have that eco mode on all the time, and I would assume in actually running this setup, the fan will probably hardly ever even be used. It will just be all passive. So that keeps the power usage down, which will be good. And then we have our Zoom Storm workstation, which is the basic unit that we basically picked up off eBay for £25. And sorry, just go back, the actual power supply was £83 for this one. There are other EVGA power supplies. I think the 500 watt was going to be about £40. But yeah, so in the end I ended up spending a bit more than I originally anticipated, but you get better quality and better use, so that's why I went for that. But yeah, going back to the actual workstation, this was only £25 from eBay, including shipping, and I'm hoping that it's going to be fine for our system. I have actually recently updated the Windows. It did actually have Windows 10 installed, but they only installed the 32-bit version, and we needed the 64-bit version to run the various softwares that we want to be running. So I've already gone ahead and done that, so we're just about ready to go. So now I can hopefully just put this whole system together, and I'll be taking you through that process with me, and then once that is done, we'll come back and we'll actually sort of test the performance, and we'll take it from there. Just looking back inside there and kind of refreshing my memory of exactly how small it is. One thing I'm pretty sure of is that we're going to have to move the hard drive. But let's continue on, firstly taking the actual power supply out. Okay, so the power supplies have been removed, pretty straightforward. A little bit dirty, but not too bad. Okay, I think what I'm actually going to do next is move the actual hard drive from this bay to one of the higher bays, and that gives us a bit more clearance in this bottom section. So let's do that. Just to give the actual graphics cards a little bit of extra clearance. So I'm just going to pop it in one of these top bays. It's not where you'd normally have it. Try and jig it in there. Okay, it looks like we're okay. What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to size up one of the actual graphics cards and make sure it will actually fit within this section. If not, I don't know, we'll work out. Let's test fit it first, and then I'll do probably the power supply and then the graphics cards last. Okay, so this is actually one of two of the actual graphics cards we're hoping to be fitting. So let's just size it up and see how it looks. Okay, so it is very very tight. I'm not sure if you can quite see it. Let me turn the actual case around and show you. I think we might have to do some modification. Okay, so where the actual the actual graphics card would actually be sitting is right about there, and then just the very back edge of it towards the actual front of the PC case just snags on that little trim where the hard drive bay is. So I think we might just have to chop that out to get both of the cards in there. I'm not too worried about the horizontal positioning side by side. I was going to use a riser for the second, or the PCI Express 1x connector. So I'm not too worried about the actual positioning from this point of view, but this is going to have to go. Well, we got there in the end. It's actually a little bit tougher than I expected. Okay, so we're ready to continue on now. I had to remove the chassis at the front section and also the other side of the actual hard drive bay there, so now we've got one nice big opening. The case is still pretty sturdy. The other option would have been we could have just built it outside of the actual box, but I really wanted to keep kind of everything inside in this one. Okay, so the power supply has been fitted and that is squeezed in there, but that's okay. And the cable management is fine for the time being. I'll tidy that up afterwards. Not honestly a major priority. So now we're moving on to the actual graphics cards. I've cleared some space out from the drive bay caddies, so we've got the length in there to fit in there now. So one card will go practically straight in by the looks of it. Obviously the slot is there, is perfectly capable of doing that. The part of the issue is with the secondary slot, so the PCI Express connector is obviously squeezed right in there, and then the actual spaces next to it are occupied with two PCI expansion ports. So what that means is I was planning on using a 1x to 16x riser, but there's quite a bit of actual space on the actual bottom of the actual riser itself, so this clips onto the actual graphics card. So when I'm going to be lowering that into position, it's going to come up against the actual board, or the actual graphics card is going to sit a little higher. So I didn't fully anticipate that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit one card and then we'll work out exactly how to fit the secondary card in there. We might have to go with some kind of floating kind of option, but we'll see. So this has actually been quite tricky so far. Working with just such a small confined space is actually really tricky. Building these rigs in the past in like a MIDI case or just like an open air rig is by far much easier way of doing it. So this has been an interesting kind of experience. Okay, so let's get the first card in and then we'll work out exactly how we're going to fit the second one in. Yeah, I think we're going to have to use 2 risers. So where that PCI Express connector is, it kind of basically button up just against here. So that's just not going to work. So what we need to do is use 2 risers, and we'll go with a double floaty option. That's what we're calling it. Okay, so we have our secondary, it's actually a 1x riser, but I'm going to use it in a 4x slot. You can do that perfectly fine. I do have full-size risers as well, but just for the compactness. And then if I kind of bend that one out that way, and maybe this is actually going to be really tricky. This is not anticipated. I'm not even sure whether we're even going to get these in there. At least not how I originally anticipated. I guess we could kind of float them up or something. It's not great. Okay, so we're going to take a little break because this is going to require some extra thought. This is not anticipated at all. Okay, so I've been having a little play about with the actual graphics cards and trying to find some way to actually fit them within the actual case, and it's just not happening. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. So this is a bit of a blunder, something on my part that I didn't thoroughly think through, and unfortunately I've had to share the experience with you guys. So it is a little bit of embarrassing for me. I do actually have another case, and I could take the time just to whip everything out of here and then put it in the new case, but to be honest, today I just don't actually have the actual time. So what I've done is I've just kind of temporarily kind of floated everything within the actual case. So I must point out this is a temporary setup. Okay, so I'm just going to show you now. Don't criticize me too much. Like I say, it is temporary until I can work out some sort of solution for it. So let's just take a look. Okay, so this is the actual rig, and you can see the actual graphics cards are rather quite large considering they are entry level cards in comparison to the actual casing itself. So I've just got one on the bottom. It's just floating on some polystyrene that come with the actual power supply, and same for the top one. I've got the power cables coming over the top. It's just a real mess. I've got some anti-static bag on there just so the back of the PCB doesn't short out on the chassis. And yeah, it's just a real mess. Airflow is going to be dreadful to the actual CPU and the power supply. Yeah, just awful. I've also got to find out whether I can put one of my DVI cables into the connectors. What I'm going to try and do is see if I can run it off the VGA connector. But that, because of the actual graphics card is in there, this VGA might not initialize, which means I kind of have to get a DVI connector in there as well as. So that's kind of where we are. So I'm just going to leave it like this just so I can temporarily test it, and then what I'll do is I'll move the whole lot into a new case. Okay, so I've just got the machine into Windows, and this is the current card configuration. I'm kind of smirking to myself, but really it's embarrassing. But anyway, that will do for the time being. So we're now in Windows. I just need to actually check to see whether the secondary card is actually initialized. Okay guys, we're back. It's a brand new day, and today has been going actually much better than yesterday. Yesterday turned into what I would describe as a inconvenience, is putting it politely. The day and the actual Ethereum build didn't go anywhere near according to plan. It was really just a mess. It was because I didn't properly plan
and cater for exactly what I was doing. When I originally purchased the Workstation, in my mind I was just going to go with a single GPU, and then somewhere along the lines I decided to change it to a twin card system, and that's where the problems sort of started. So when I actually went through yesterday's process, there was problems with the cards physically fitting or not physically fitting within the actual casing, and once I actually managed to cut away enough of the actual casing to fit the actual cards roughly within the space, then there was problems with the actual PCI Express connectors. I was intending on using the riser cables, but when I fitted one card in, then it blocked access to the 1 times PCI Express port, and that also was vice versa. So in the end I ended up using riser cables and just literally left the cards kind of floating outside the case, which wasn't my intention. Originally I wanted to kind of have a closed case system, just one simple box that I could kind of move anywhere I needed to, and it was most likely going to go in my shed anyway, to be honest. But as it turned out, that's just not an option, like I say, because I didn't carefully think about exactly what I was going to do in the long term. I just kind of assumed the cards would be a little bit smaller and the case would be a little bit bigger, and the overlaps wouldn't be quite so close. So that was just just a mistake. But sometimes these things happen. You just have to work your way through the situation as best as you can. So that's what I've done today. I was considering either putting the same sort of hardware into a slightly bigger case, but the problem still occurred there, even though there's more space for the actual graphics cards to go, because in this particular motherboard design, the PCI Express the 16 times connector and the 1 times connector, to use riser cables and also the dimensions of the actual graphics card, one basically blocks the other. So you basically need to have 2 riser cables, and then even with like I say a slightly larger case, the setup just wasn't really going to work there. So really the only way to actually utilize this motherboard with a twin card setup was to get the whole thing out and just have like an open air rig. So what I've actually done is done that. I had an old bit of a framework that I had for a previous rig that I was using about a year ago, so just a little bit of very thin timber and really not of the best quality, to be honest. But I've just used that to temporarily set it up, and what I'll do is I'll build a better frame in the near future, and then I'll sort of set that rig up on a better basis. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you the rig in its current sort of formation. Hopefully it fires up normally, and then we can look at the actual start looking at the actual performance of the actual hardware a little bit, and then we can move on from there. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual current setup. Okay, so here it is from this perspective. You can just see the 2 cards kind of floating on the frame. The same motherboards underneath. We've got a power supply on the left hand side, and our hard drive is actually sitting on the power supply itself. Okay, so we're just viewing it at another position there. Trying to zoom in a little bit. So just taking the camera off the tripod, try and give you a little better look inside. So we've got 2 R7 370s, they're turning away nicely. We've got our motherboard underneath there. In terms of connectors, we've just got 2 USB connectors that are connected to keyboard and mouse, Ethernet, DVI cable, power lead. You can see the actual graphics cards fans have just stopped now, and that's actually by design. So when they have no load on them or they're just idling, they'll actually go into like a completely silent operation. Okay, so let's run Claymore's dual miner. Okay, let's fire up the miner. I'm also going to, whilst that's actually running, I will install the Msi Afterburner, get that installed, and then we can just measure the temperatures of the actual cards and also the clock speeds. The actual graphics cards fans have only just kicked in, literally just at that second there. And you can actually, from this angle, I'll move the camera so you can actually sort of see, but they're rotating very slowly. Okay, so the drivers that I'm actually using are the 16.5.3. At this point in time, I don't know whether they're actually any good drivers for mining or not. The actual current hash speed appears to be fairly average. So what I'd have to do is just check through the forums and find out what other people are using, and then get a better match on the actual drivers themselves. Okay, so the temperatures are currently, let me show you, I've got this little from my house. So the ambient temperature in the room is just under 30 degrees. It's very hot in here again. And then the CPU temperatures, we've got, GPU temperatures is 68, and the other one is at 66. So they're both running about the same. Yeah, I thought the actual fan speed would be very low. So one's at 28%, and the other one was 24%. So roughly about the same there. So the fans are actually turning really slowly. It's not really making any noise at all, really. Let me just, I'll just crank up the actual fan speed. I'll do it to, let's see if you can hear the difference. Yeah, you should be able to hear that. It's quite, it's not a bad noise, but you can notice the actual sound from it. You can see the temperatures are obviously starting to come down there as well. I'll just put that back to auto. So the actual fan and cooling system is a really good design, and they're going to run nice and cool. Okay, the actual clocks, reported clocks, are 1030 for the core clock, and the memory clock is at 1400. Once again, I'm going to have a look on the forums and then confirm exactly the best clock speeds to use to get the best performance from these cards. At the moment, I haven't really done any research or testing into this, so it's you know, as new to me as it can be. Okay guys, so our miner is nicely hashing away. It's currently doing about 27 mega hashes. I think with a little bit of tweaking, we should be able to easily get over 30 hashes per second with this particular setup. Shouldn't be too much bother at all. So I'd just like to wrap this video up, but before I do that, I just wanted to talk about the actual problems that we encountered during this little journey together. There's a few things that kind of didn't go exactly according to plan, and I think if you're actually intending on doing anything like this, if you're building a single card rig, you're not really going to encounter any of these issues. Most of the problems are actually caused by if you're building multiple cards and trying to get them within either a confined space, or even if you have an open space, you need to work out exactly how you're going to do it beforehand. So before you get started, just think about exactly what you want as the actual end result. Part of the problem for me was, I think when I first started, I was just going to build a single card cheap rig as cheap as possible, and somewhere along the lines I decided that I was going to add in a secondary card, which mean changing or uprating the actual power supply, and also the actual casing of the actual workstation. I didn't fully consider when I was going for that secondary card. I thought I'd just be able to work out some way of actually jamming that in there, and that just really wasn't an option. The only way to do it was actually to get that motherboard out of the actual casing, and then basically, you know, as you can see behind me, do like an open air sort of setup. That wasn't really my original intention. So before you get started, just think exactly what you want to achieve when you're building something like this. In terms of the actual objectives, the workstation did only cost £25, so that essentially we didn't use the actual case from it, so that was, you know, no big deal there. The crucial parts was the CPU, the RAM, and the motherboard. They're the key components. Oh, also the hard drive as well. If you have to buy that separately, obviously that can cost a little bit of money on its own. So we've got all those components for £25. To buy them new individually, we'd probably be looking closer to around about £75. So we saved quite a bit of money there. One of the other things was the power supply. I could have gone for a much cheaper power supply, but in this particular instance, I thought there was the option of I'll probably be expanding the capacity of this little miner in the future, obviously with a new motherboard as well as, or at least a different configuration motherboard. One that supports multiple cards would be ideal. So on that power supply, is good for future purposes, basically. So I overspent a little bit on that. And then the actual graphics cards, I could have built this rig with just a single graphics card, and it would have been obviously the overall cost would have been cheaper. But when it comes to crypto mining, particularly if you're using graphics cards, it's cheaper to build out as many cards per system as you can, and that way you're going to get the best efficiencies. So in this particular case, due to funds and things like that, and I considered exactly what I wanted to spend, I decided to go with a 2-card rig rather than just a single card rig on its own, which, like I say, that would have been the cheapest way to do it. So if you are looking to sort of dip your toes into this and you want something just to try and experiment with, perhaps, or you're looking at just different avenues or different projects that you might want to get into, starting with a single workstation, a good power supply, and a single graphics card will be no bother at all really to set up, and that will get you on your way. So that is about it for this video. It's been an interesting project. I've learned a few bits along the way, how to do certain things and how not to do certain other things. And it's been a fun experience overall. Hopefully you might have benefited from it as well. That is ultimately my goal. Obviously I can get to do this and share the experience with you guys. So yeah, that's it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, then please leave them in the comments box below, and I'll be sure to get back to you guys. And also, take the time, if you did like this video, if there's any slim chance of that, be sure to like it. And if you like this style of video or cryptocurrency, PC hardware and that kind of thing, be sure to subscribe, because I'm uploading videos of that nature all the time. So till next time guys, thanks for watching. Bye.